Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Sword of the Spirit, Sermonator, episode 61. Imagine that. Well, this is our next in the series about the book of Daniel. We finished off last week dealing with chapter 3, 4, 5, and we're going to go into 6 and 7 and 8. Now, these are some of the most difficult things to pin down because there are some dates which we'll work through, okay? And there are so many different concepts. And I don't have all the answers, but the way we get to the answers is by digging in and trying to relate everything to everything else going on. In Daniel, Daniel is a pivotal book, a prophetic book, which points not only to the current situation, but the next situation in history, dealing with the different conquests of Israel. But it also, again, being contemporaneous, it also not only shows us a vision of the future, but tells us it's that. Very unique book. And you've got to remember that pretty much everything that we're going to see after chapter 6 is a vision. And in visions, as it said in Isaiah, your old men will dream dreams, your young men will see visions, and they will prophesy or speak forth what they see, predictive or otherwise. And there's a lot of signs and symbols within these visions, and the time frames and the people and the nations involved. They're all simultaneously the same and different at the same time because they're comprehensive. That I can say clearly because of what happens in Daniel 9, 10, 11, and 12, which are all about what's going on downstream. However, not in the way that Orthodox Christian Bible prophecy teachers have taught for the last 50 years. We overturned that over a year ago in the episode on 70 Weeks Are Determined. And after looking at everything and seeing what's going on, not only in the book of Daniel, but what's going on today, I decided it's most prudent to repeat that message as the last part of our study in Daniel. So we're going to try to get through 6 and 7 and maybe some 8 tonight, where some of these visions happen and mentions of beasts. And, the beasts, there's always 4 of them. We're 2 of them in Revelation. But there are 4 here, and they can be, again, in different historical contexts, same or similar beasts. And we're going to try to relate them so that when we go forward in Daniel 9 and beyond, then we'll have a much better understanding. Now, having said that, what's going on in the world today, in our country and everything else is it ain't good. And it doesn't portend to get better. All right? I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but I always hear people telling me about some great revival that's going to happen. And that's nice. I wish it would, and I hope it does, but it's not scripturally sound. In fact, the opposite. We've studied and seen the tragedy of it all. A great falling away, 2 Thessalonians 2:4, and then the man of sin will be revealed. Falling away. Well, as we've said more than once, who's falling away? People in religions that say they believe in the Messiah. Why? Not only bad teaching, but false doctrine, and religions are religions. Rules, regulations, dogma, nothing to do with faith. Not to say that many in those do not have good and proper faith. But as a whole, religion's a mess. And then there's what's going on in the world. I want to read some quotes to you today. So if you think that when you hear some of these things, what they call conspiracies or conspiracy theories, let me tell you something. If it weren't for conspiracy and conspiracy theories, there would be no discipline called history. We wouldn't need one. But history is replete with conspiracies. And all a conspiracy is two people discussing and agreeing to do something, good, bad, or indifferent. That's all it takes. So let's not use words in the colloquial sense, like I hear, oh, the apocalypse is coming. Oh, the apocalypse is coming. Oh, I better build an apocalypse pantry so I don't run out of food. Apocalypse has got nothing to do with that kind of a definition. The word apocalypse comes from apocalypto or apocalypsis, which means to reveal, i.e., the revelation. He's revealing stuff to us. He's not hiding it. That's how everybody has gotten people twisted around. Bad doctrine. False doctrine. So anyway, the things that are going on are very consistent as we review and we go into Daniel even more later and relate it always again to Revelation. You know, we're going to see a lot of different things that we need to take note of and that we need to be aware of that are happening right underneath our noses, okay? Because that's exactly what's going on. And again, none of it is good. But we take solace in the fact that our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above. He reigns with power and love. However, what's going on in the world today? Anti-Semitism on the rise. Jewish people getting beaten in the streets in Germany, fleeing from Germany and other countries, including the United States. Millions have left. This whole issue of a new world order and all this other mess, I'm going to read to you direct quotes from people so that you can set in our minds where Daniel is pointing us and where Revelation is pointing us and what's actually going on right before our very eyes. Never happened before. So we know that we have these globalists, which are basically international socialists. And they like to rule things. They also like to label people as fascists when they're in fact fascists. All right? Fascism is not a form of government. It's a leadership and control style. Hitler was a fascist. The Nazis were National Socialists. The elite few dictating to the masses who are in socialism, equally impoverished. These are facts, and history supports it. But in order to have a world government, or what they're actually trying to pose is a world constitution, that's why they're trying to, people in our country are trying to destroy it, okay? And it's not the people that the media are saying. It's the other ones. And what's happening in the world, it seems to be that they're calling for a world government and a constitution amid growing, what I would say, disenchantment with the current form of global governance, as if there was one. The way in which global affairs are currently managed, so to speak. So when you discuss global governance, the only thing that comes to my mind is its failures. There are no achievements. The Brookings Institute would also give a report on that, saying that the pillars of global governance, never-ending wars in the Middle East, humanitarian interventions turning into humanitarian catastrophes, the remaining enormous North-South gap, a sequel to the 2008 financial crisis, right at the gates, and all of these bear witness to the fact that the current system of global governance does not quite work as well as it should, because there's no such thing as global governance. We're not interested in a global social contract, all right? Not where we're sitting in a war on terror. Not when people are getting murdered by the dozens, the hundreds, and the thousands. People still being genocided by the millions. Come on, man. That's what has been evolving right here in our country, okay? And it's not good. It's not good. I can tell you that as far as, I got to say probably at least 10 years or more ago, the turmoil was beginning to foment in Ukraine already. Actually, probably around 2015, 7, 8 years ago. All right. So, behind the crisis involving Russia and Ukraine, there's an attempt by what's called the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, to replace the dollar, the U.S. dollar, all right, with a new world currency and a full-fledged global governance. I told you about Garen Mabry and ICANN, the International Corporation for the Accumulation of Names and Numbers, the control mechanisms that are out there, the divestiture of that part of the internet from the United States to this group, all right? Now, Russia obviously interested in Ukraine so they can, basically control the import and export of oil and grain because they and Ukraine ship the most grain. The dollar remains the world currency. I told you in 2014 it was hard pressed by China to make their yuan or renminbi, whatever you want to call it, the world currency. Never going to happen because it's not traded internationally. However, there are concessions being made out of fear. To the highest consumer goes the greatest benefits, okay? They get to pay in petrodollars instead of US dollars. First time in history it ever happened. And the Russians turn around and go to Germany and say, you're going to pay us in rubles right after the war when they thought the ruble crashed. It didn't crash. All currencies devolve a little bit or undervalue a little bit when a war starts because of uncertainty, production, this, that, and the third. It's a gamble. But it soon caught up, and then it was even further strengthened when Germany just acquiesced and said, okay, we'll pay in rubles. So there's a lot of stuff going on, all right? Our currency is still, because of our military dominance, our strategic oil-producing regions, all these things that would keep us right. Meanwhile, there's crisis in the Middle East, Syria, Iran, Iraq, all the other Middle Eastern nations with control of massive oil supplies by Russia and Iran. And they're exporting oil from Syria to Europe and China, all right? So this has been going on and building for a long time, Expect to see the attempts for global coup, expect to see the United Nations try and begin to dominate as well. And all of this stuff that we're talking about, I'm mentioning here, really comes right back to how kingdoms worked, how they were run, how God set them in and then took them down, and it's all part of what we see in Daniel. Okay, and it's a great part of what we're going to see going forward. All right. So now I want to read to you some things, some quotes from some of the people that belong to certain groups and societies and world leaders, other credible sources, okay? Here we go. 1. Behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government, owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. That was said by President Theodore Roosevelt, our 26th president, shortly after the turn of the century. Here's another one by somebody that's going to very much surprise you, because they began as a globalist. League of Nations, which preceded the United Nations, was his brainchild. He's right here from Jersey. Jersey boy, born and bred, Princeton grad. An easy political dupe. But here's what he said when he figured it out. I'm a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men. President Woodrow Wilson, back in the 1920s. 28th President of the United States. I'm going to read a couple more. We shall have world government, whether or not we like it. The question is only whether world government will be achieved by consent or by conquest. James Warburg, German-born American banker. Father, Paul Warburg. Okay. The father of the Federal Reserve, i.e., central bank in the United States. In his testimony on February 17, 1950, before the United States Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. So you see, these are not quotes from crazies. Next one. The drive of the Rockefellers and their allies is to create a one-world government, combining supercapitalism and communism under the same tent, all under their control. Sounds a lot like Nebuchadnezzar and his successors here in Daniel and Babylon, to Persia, to the Greeks, to the Romans, all these empires and the empire builders. Well, listen. I'll read it again. The drive of the Rockefellers and their allies is to create a one-world government combining supercapitalism and communism under the same tent, all under their control. Do I mean conspiracy? Yes, I do. I'm convinced there is such a plot, international in scope, generations old in planning, and incredibly evil in intent. Congressman Larry McDonald, Democrat, member of the House of Representatives from Georgia, Democrat. One more. Well, two more. Out of these troubled times, our objective, a new world order, can emerge. Today, that new world order is struggling to be born, a world quite different from the one we have now. George H.W. Bush Sr., 41st President of the United States, former director of the CIA, former congressman, former senator, Yale graduate, skull and bones. You can't, these are quotes, direct, documented. All right, now we come to the next one and the last one. For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents, such as my encounter with Castro, to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence that they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe that we are a part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. And if that's the charge against me, I stand guilty and I'm proud of it. David Rockefeller, American businessman, served as chairman as chief executive of Chase Manhattan Bank in his book, Memoirs, 2002. Secrecy for so many decades. Now they're bold to come out and make it clear that this is their intent. This is the same intent that has plagued man since the beginning of time. Okay? So now, let's go back to Daniel, chapter 6. I told you Daniel gets promoted, okay? Belshazzar was killed, and Darius, the Mede, the Persian, was set to rule over the kingdom. 120 princes that would rule with him over the kingdom. And in this, over these would be 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was the first, and that the princes might give account unto them, and the king should have no damage. In other words, he set up his entire superstructure, his business model. He's at the top. He's got 3 guys underneath him. They got 120 below him. Standard, top-down pyramid structure, organizational chart. And it said, then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and the princes because he had an excellent spirit was in him. And the king thought to set him over the whole realm. Daniel, called the slave from Judah earlier by the detractors, conspired against by others who were punished. Now, next to the king, he's the biggest, he's the big makkah. The big guy. The big guy. I didn't say that. So, but Darius, like all other kings and men, they can't help but trip over their own feet. So he is convinced and conned into basically making another foolish decree, like the ones that plagued Nebuchadnezzar and those in behind him. So in chapter 6, verse 4, it says, the presidents and the princes sought to find an occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom. You see, they always want to shoot the guy at the top. The guy didn't do anything but what he was expected to do, did it with loyalty and justice, and did right things. And these guys want a little whispering campaign to get rid of him. They want to hurt him, okay? For as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. But then these men said, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except that we find it against him concerning the law of God. In other words, unless we make one up, all right? Unless we make one up. Now we know, and we concede to the fact that when we live out a biblical principled life, all right, there's going to inevitably be confrontational issues that we have to really dig into to understand, all right? We're going to need spiritual discipline for that. And that can only be produced within us by a deliberate yielding to the Spirit's power. I mean, that's what's required, a self-discipline. So we know this guy Daniel has exhibited that, and so have his brothers. And yet these guys are going to try. They know who he is. They know what he's done in the past. How stupid do you have to be to not understand that 3 guys go in a fire, the king sees 4, the 3 come out, they don't even smell of ashes. These guys knew all about this stuff. But let's go on. So Daniel 6:6 says, then these presidents and princes assembled together the king, and they said thus to him, King Darius, may you live forever. Talk about blowing smoke up somebody's nose. All the presidents of the kingdom, the governors and the princes, the counselors, the captains, they have consulted together. They conspired to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man, all right, for 30 days, other than the king himself, he shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, it seems pretty innocuous on the front, So, dear king, establish the decree and sign the writing that it be not changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which altereth not. So King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Why? Who knows? Ego? Who knows? These guys talked a good game. Daniel wasn't around there. If I was the king, I'd have said, where's my man? Where's Daniel? We'll see. Did he go to Union City to go to a restaurant? Where'd he go? We read on. Verse 10. Daniel does what he always does. He prays faithfully. So when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows were open, his chamber toward Jerusalem. He knelt on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and give thanks before God, as he did every day, aforetime. These men then assembled that little whispering campaign, that little huddle, all right? They found Daniel praying and making supplication before, this is when they say, before his God, all right? They came near, they spoke before the king, they ratted him out. They reminded him of his decree, and they said, remember, all right, didn't you sign a decree that every man that shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, unless it was you, all right, that they would be cast in the den of lions? Didn't you say that, oh kingy? The king said, this thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which is not alterable. Then answered they, and they said, well, before the king, well, that Daniel, which is of the children of captivity of Judah, all right, regards thee not, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. The king, when he heard these things, was very sore displeased, okay? They put him in checkmate, basically. He was displeased with himself. He was duped. But because of the law of the land, he couldn't change it. So listen what happens. He set his heart on Daniel to deliver him, and he labored until the going down of the sun to deliver him. Now listen closely. Nothing is what it seems. He deliberated. He waited till the sun went down. Remember that. Then these men assembled unto the king, and they said unto the king, O king, you know that the law of the Medes and the Persians, no decree or statute that has the kings established can be changed. Even you can't change it, O kingy poo. The king knew this. The king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. Now the king spoke and said unto Daniel, thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. The king had a plan too. A stone was brought, laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet, with his signet ring, and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. Now listen in verse 18. He says, then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. Neither were instruments or music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. The king arose very early in the morning and went right away in haste unto the den of lions. When he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. Oh, the king spake, and he said, Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God whom thou servest continually, was he able to deliver thee from the lions? Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, may you live forever, my brother. My God hath sent his angel, and hath shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me. For as much as before him innocency was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. Then was the king exceedingly glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. And no manner of hurt was found on him, because he believed in his God. The king commanded. He brought those men which had accused Daniel, and he cast them in the den of lions. And guess what happened? Their children and their wives, the lions tore them apart, ripped them apart to shreds. Dead. Dead, dead. And then Darius makes a wise decree. He wrote unto all the people and nations and languages that dwelled in the earth, and he said, peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and steadfast forever, and his kingdom shall not be destroyed. His dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in heaven and earth. Who hath delivered Daniel from the power of the lions? Those as Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. And what we don't know here is that lions don't eat at night, they sleep. He waited all day. He devised a plan to save Daniel, to deliver him. So he delivered him at night. And he ran the first thing in the morning to see, because the lions would be getting hungry. As we found out, they ate all the bad guys' families. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and begin 7. We set a nice course here. Be right back.